But my name is Lindsay. I use she, her pronouns. I am the only staff member that works for the UWC National Committee of Canada. And I'm very lucky that I get to work out of Pearson College, the UWC that we have based here in Canada on Vancouver Island, which is located on Chiana First Nations unceded territory, which means that this land was taken without permission through the colonial history that Canada has. And it's important that I highlight that, that is something within the reconciliation practices that Pearson College and UWC Canada is working hard to make sure that we're educating, we're truth-telling, and we're figuring out ways to decolonize this experience as much as possible. I'm very grateful to work for UWC and to be able to present to not only UWC alumni, but it sounds like future UWC parents and potential volunteers. And also often we have educators who want to learn more about UWC and figure out ways to get involved. So because this is a recording, we're going to skip this slide. But if anybody is watching and wants to send me an email, please feel free to let me know the content and context of you joining. UWC is a big network, and for many alumni, as a non-alum, a wannabe alum is usually what I refer to myself as. I've been able to look at the experience of UWC a little bit differently with my background in education. And looking at the journey that students go through when they're pursuing an experience like this. So I try to break down UWC from a different perspective, I think, than alumni sometimes see it, or sometimes parents see it. And it helps for Canada because Canada is a complicated historical feature of the United World College organization. So let me start off with the UWC network that you see on the slide. There is an international council. There's an international board and a variety of committees that sit on the international board. One of those committees that is very strongly affiliated with us is the Committee of National Committees. A terrible name, but also very clear and explanatory in that it is a committee that helps design and support and evolve the national committee structure that makes up UWC. And that's what I like to really get into. There are over 165 national committees that function in the world, either from nation states or territories, to support candidates from their regions in going to one of the 18 UWC schools or colleges around the world. So we are the most international education opportunity that exists in the world because of our national committee structure. There's no other school entity in the world that has this much diversity when you're looking at countries, nation states, passports, territories, and representation on those campuses. It's something to be super proud of. The national committee structure is also very unique because it does mean that these 18 United World Colleges are not in control of who they admit. And for a private education model, this is a very rare thing to find. Traditionally, most private schools, and often many public schools, have their own admissions process where their own staff select the candidates that move into their process. But the way UWC works, as many of you know, is you apply through your national committee, who is made up of volunteers and regional representatives who know what it's like to live where you're from and understand the context of your access to opportunity and perhaps lack of opportunity, and are able to really consider what will be representative of your culture and country or territory when you go. And it's really a huge part, I think, that makes UWC so magical. It's definitely the aspect for me as someone who used to be in university admissions, who looked at this structure and just went, this is really genius. And this is a very important method of building a community. And often I call the national committee structure like the basis of the architecture of these articulately designed international communities. So they're really, really cool. And so we're here today to talk about how that works in Canada, being such a large geographical country with a lot of regions, a lot of cultures represented. How does that work in this place? Not only are we made up of national committees, but I've mentioned the 18 schools and colleges. And I've mentioned a few times the international structure of the council and the board, and they all sort of function within the UWC International Office, which has two locations, one in Berlin, Germany, and the other in London in the United Kingdom. But most importantly, the UWC network is made up of our students, our teachers, our campus communities, the parents who are and guardians who are sacrificing time with their students to send them to a UWC early on. And so I really want to honor that part of this community as well. I will share the slides with all of you if you've RSVP'd for this. And in the YouTube recording link, you'll find these slides available so that you can access all of the links that I'm sharing with you on the slide today. So let's talk a little bit about Canada, because as a Canadian, I'm very, very proud to be a representative for Canada within this international education organization. And I really like to geek out a bit on how UWC became a organization as powerful and big as it is today. Hopefully, many of you already know that United World Colleges were founded really as one school called Atlantic College in the early 1960s, around 1964, where that school was founded by Kurt Hahn, a German educator living in the UK at the time, where he thought if we could bring people together from many different parts of the world, that would promote understanding, less fear, and help us work towards more peace building and more peace throughout the world, given the state of the world and the fear that was in it, all over the world due to the Cold War and coming out of all of the wars before that. When it was founded, there needed to be national committees that were selecting students from all of these different countries to go to Atlantic College. And predominantly, most of us existed through our governments at the time. And so for Canada, our national committee really existed thanks to Lord Mountbatten, who navigated a lot of scholarship relationships with countries to get them to send the students to Atlantic College. And so Canada, for that first sort of decade of UWC existence, had a national committee, but it was predominantly run through our federal government. We are very lucky to have had a leader at that time in the early 1970s named Lester B. Pearson, who was also one of the critical leaders who helped to build and establish the United Nations. At the time, in the early 1970s, honestly, late 1960s, Lester B. Pearson, I don't know the exact year, but was nominated and then awarded a Nobel Peace Prize, thanks to the work that he did with the establishment of the United Nations and the Suez Canal conflict negotiations that he was involved in. And he was invited to do a peace tour, which is a really cool thing to think about, where he went to Europe, and a part of that peace tour, he got to visit Atlantic College. And after the tour, I'm told, through a variety of people telling this story, because I wasn't there firsthand, although, gosh, it would have been cool to have been there. He left that visit saying, Canada will be the next home to a United World College. And that's why Pearson College is named after Lester B. Pearson, but its full title is actually Lester B. Pearson United World College of the Pacific. And so you had the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean as sort of this key anchor in how United World Colleges began to grow. And I really think that that visit that Lester B. Pearson got to have with the other Canadian folks that helped bring a UWC to Canada is a major part of why this is a movement, why we call it this growing thing that has gotten us to 18 schools and colleges worldwide today. So Pearson College has existed for over 50 years. We opened here in 1974, and so Pearson just celebrated its 50th anniversary. And at this point, we are at what happened to the National Committee when we didn't have a school in those first sort of 10 years where we were only sending Canadians to Atlantic College. We had a very different mission. We were sending Canadians out of our country. But once Canada decided that it would build a United World College here, the National Committee became the people that helped build the school. And it sort of just naturally inherited the National Committee. And Pearson was also the entity that would send and manage how Canadians would go to UWC. But as I mentioned, most UWCs don't get to control their admissions process. And so what the folks at Pearson College did from the 1970s was establish regional selection teams. And at the time, Pearson College was extremely well funded by provincial and territory governments, where they had scholarships for one student from every province and territory to attend Pearson College. And so the majority of Canadians really did start to funnel into Pearson as a host nation. And the goal was to make sure that we had real representation across all of the regions at Pearson College. Fast forward, 40 years later, federal funding and provincial and territory education funding has changed so much, I'd say in the last 20 years in Canada. And Pearson College has also shifted in its scholarship model. As most UWCs have, it's really hard to make this entire school system scholarship based. And so we have lost a lot of our federal and provincial funding, though we do still have a little bit in some areas. We're predominantly based on a financial aid model today, which is pay what you can and pay what is fair. And this is something that we work really hard to do to make sure that UWC remains accessible for Canadians. But it's really shifted the way we function. And it's also needed to shift because we want to be able to send Canadians to all the UWCs worldwide. And as things happen with a lot of not-for-profits and schools trying to do so much more than they likely have capacity to do. Selection teams regionally weren't always serving the goal of sending Canadians to as many schools as they could abroad. So in 2017, actually it says late 2016 on the slide, but 2017 really, we had some alumni, some wonderful alumni, Canadian alumni who went to MUCI and UWC USA, who really advocated to separate and formalize a national committee in Canada that was separate from Pearson College. But we have a wonderful relationship with Pearson College in that as my role as a staff member, I get to work and serve and support Pearson, but also work independently serving the board of the National Committee of Canada. And we are separate entities with separate goals that support one another. And so we're also a very unique national committee and in-country school model when you compare us to many of the other 18 national committees and schools, or 17, sorry, that exist in the world. So where this goes is that we're actually one of now the youngest national committees in this organization, although we have such a deep history with UWC that I think it surprises a lot of folks when they really learn about how we function here in Canada and what that history looks like. So a couple of things that have evolved throughout the years is what is a national committee and what is our responsibility in the work that we do. And so there's a lot of text on this slide that you're welcome to read. I'm not going to verbatim read it out loud, but I am going to highlight what we say in Canada, which is that our core function, and this is the core function of all 165 plus national committees around the world, we seek, select, and support our students on their UWC journey. And so that means that we start from promotions. We are encouraging students to apply to UWC. We are trying to make sure that our population is informed that this exists, that this is not a secret. We then coach them and guide them through the application process. We select them with regional teams and national teams. And then once they are selected and nominated and headed to a UWC, we support them over their 2-year journey. And we also really engage and try to support them as they return home when they graduate. And hopefully, for the rest of their lives, they will maintain a component of UWC engagement in their lives in some way. So it's broken down in a lot of functions that we do. I've highlighted, I think, promotion and selections and support. But one of the other critical things that we do in Canada, because we are a hub for a lot of UWCers to move to live to for a university, for work, for jobs. It's a country where a lot of folks have chosen to build their lives, that we are a hub for UWCers from any place in the world with any connection to UWC, short course or school and college otherwise, as alumni. We also are big into fundraising. It's a hard thing to do because I think very few of us are experts in fundraising, but we are creative and we work hard to make sure that finances are not something that are going to hold back our students from going to a UWC. And we do play a really critical role in how UWC functions, from policy creation to, responses to global events. There's a big role that NCs play in the governance of this organization. And a really big goal for us in Canada is to start running more short courses and making more opportunities for people to experience the magic of UWC, whether it's over a weekend, 2 weeks, or 2 years, because we all know that this experience, this 2-year experience at a UWC can be very exclusive. When you look at and consider the world population and you think of the youth that are 16 to 19, the chances of attending a UWC right now with 18 schools is still 1 in 1 million. And that's too exclusive to make the change that we really want to make in this world. So the more we can create UWC short courses and opportunities that open up and bring in more people, the more we're creating the impact on our country and our population for the better. Okay, who makes up our board of directors currently? So we are a young national committee, and we've had some really incredible alumni help build and lead the creation of the national committee. And I would say we've really started to build some momentum and hit our stride and created a really great structure. We have Alistair Foreman, who is the chair of our board, Gurveen Chadha, the vice chair of our board, and are also chair of our Alumni and Community Engagement Committee, ACE, as we call it. Jeff Needham, who is the chair of our Nominations and Governance Committees. Libby Mason, who is chair of selections and also affiliated with our wellness subcommittee. And then we have 6 regional chair positions. Allison, Hillary, Izzy, Connor, Hannah make up BC, North, Ontario, Prairies, and Quebec. But as you'll see, I've highlighted, we do continue to have a vacant role for the Atlantic region. We do have their bios available on our website. So if you would like to learn a bit more about who they are, you're more than welcome to do so. But they're a great team of alumni and parents of alumni and staff of UWC. So not everyone on the board is an alum, but they all have shared something major in their lives with United World Colleges at some point. I've introduced myself, I think, early on, but I do have the privilege of working for UWC Canada as the executive director. And I did want to highlight that we are hiring for consulting positions always. So if you know of someone who's interested in working with the NC in a little bit more responsibility role than a volunteer role, we do have these that we're always seeking someone for. I thought it would be good to cover our sort of annual cycle of events and dates and where the work kind of ebbs and flows for volunteers. Um, we start in the fall. We just passed September 21st, UWC Day. Every year, we try to have major events in at least Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver. Sometimes it does depend on our local volunteer capacity. And over the past 4 years, we have, ran different types of events, leaning less into the pub gatherings and more into film viewings and conversations about those films, and stuff like that. We do a lot of promotion work where we've got volunteers attending college fairs or leadership conferences for students, or entering schools and presenting about UWC. We do that in May and June before the school year ends here in Canada, and we do that really, really, so I would say hardcore dedicated in September through December. But our application deadline for window 1 is November 5th. I say November 1st every year, but we usually try to make it on the first Wednesday of November for that first cycle and our biggest cycle of applications to close. We read in a very dedicated and quick manner every application that comes in for about 3 weeks. So by the end of the 3rd week of November, our reading period has closed. And we will invite candidates to a group virtual activity weekend that is national, not regional. And we will do that on the last weekend of November. If students are then invited to interview after that weekend, they would be interviewed over the course of the first 2, sometimes 3 weekends of December. But our goal is to inform candidates that they are finalists by December 20th. And so our selections period is really heavy and can be a lot of work in November, December, which is not always the easiest time to volunteer. Everything is virtual. Everything is manageable on your own time if you are to be engaged as a reader. And everything is really clearly set up for you for those weekends if that's something that you're looking to get involved in. I'll talk more about that in a bit. We pivot from selections through January until April. Looks like I need to edit this slide a bit to say that. But by March 30th or April 1st, our nomination cycle is complete. And nominations for us is another committee. It typically entails 90 to 120 financial aid assessments and considerations for matching for Canadian students to send them to the UWCs around the world. Our goal is to try to have every student placed by March 30th, but throughout the years, UWC admissions process has gotten a lot longer, and so we have a global wait list and we also have a Canadian wait list, and so nominations can kind of exist honestly into June. And sometimes we place students even at Pearson College in late August to early September off the wait list. So it can be a long cycle for us in the work that we do. I do want to give a shout out this year. All Canadians across the National Committee and Global Selections, because we support students no matter the path that they choose to apply through. We have 91 students as a national committee that we are supporting. And that does mean Canada is the second biggest national committee entity in the world to support our students and our population in attending UWCs. The only country currently ahead of us is China. And from a population standpoint, that's quite huge. But it is really incredible. And it's pretty amazing to have the numbers that we have headed to UWC. Which also increases our need to provide support. And so a part of that support is webinars that we provide to students, parents, educators, our current students and their parents, our volunteers. We do it on Wednesdays in the fall. We do these First Friday volunteer onboarding presentations and things like that throughout the year. But we really build into May, June mentorship onboarding. So if you were a recent graduate of a UWC within the last 5 years, I'll talk a bit more about how to engage with us as a mentor. And then we do orientation, which is virtual, but we try to create an experience for our students and their parents where they're engaging as a cohort across Canada. And so, we work across 6 time zones to make sure that it is possible for everybody to get together. But we usually do a series of orientation sessions through June with everyone together. And then we start all over again, July 1st on Canada Day. We launch our application every year for the next season because we really believe that that is the way to help make Canada a better place, is to try to engage more students and send them to UWC. And July 5th, every year, we usually also, and I say July 5th, but it's usually that weekend after the long weekend, where we do regional celebration and welcome gatherings, where we celebrate our grads and we welcome in our new students, and their parents and guardians as well. So I hope this gives you a bit of an annual idea of what we do. There's a lot more that I could share, but that gives you the gist. So let's talk a little bit about the volunteer roles that are available. I'm going to start off with alumni research. Because of our history, as I explained at the beginning, Canada does not have the best records of, in particular, Canadian students who went to UWCs abroad. Because we're 10 years old, we're really missing a lot of information for the first 50 years of Canadians that were going to UWC. So we have been, building a list of alumni names, whatever we can get from the international office that they're allowed to share with us through their data protection policies, through the schools, through Pearson, what they may have tracked or not. And we're building a list to try to find our alumni because we have names, but we have no contact information. We don't know where they are, what they're doing. And I'll be honest with you, for the past couple of years where we work with recent alums, it's so hard to keep up with them, to keep them checking their emails or to keep their information, up to date with us, that maintaining alumni contact information is a real gap for us. So we do have a project that is built around trying to find these people's names and call them, send them emails, find them on LinkedIn, find some way to get in touch with them to figure out, are they the right person? Are they affiliated with UWC? Would they like to know what we're up to? Would they like to volunteer with us? What is their story? Just getting to know them and tracking them down. So you could join us for a calling or for online research. We're always looking for content creation and social media. It is often me at midnight on my phone trying to get something up. But we have found 2 incredible volunteers for this fall. So if you follow us on social media, you'll see us being a lot more active right now, and building a TikTok account and all of the things that I am not an expert in. So those are areas for volunteering. We do have a mental health and wellness subcommittee for people who have a background in mental health support. It's a really helpful advisory committee when it comes to mentorship support and also selection work and nominations. We're always looking for help with promotions. Unfortunately, there are still so many teachers out there that have never heard of UWC, let alone their students. I like to use Alberta as a great example because Alberta still has 8 fully funded Grant MacEwan United World College scholarships that we're so grateful that we still have, which means Alberta has the highest number of students that we can send guaranteed every year, above the other spaces that we're able to send students from. But I can tell you that the dominant applications that we're getting are only coming from Edmonton and Calgary. And we would really love for there to be more awareness in that province alone about UWC. And I encounter educators that have, been guidance counselors for 40 years before they retire, and they've never heard of UWC still. So promotions is so hugely important. I think it's something that really aligns for me because I found out about UWC when I was too old, and I was really devastated because I so wish I had known about this opportunity when I was 17. So promotions is a big one. If you're brave enough and willing to, contact a school and get in there and drop off some brochures or talk with a principal or go back to a favorite teacher and say, we really need more students to apply. We need that. So that's what promotions is all about. Webinar panelist. We do try to run alumni and current student panels as a part of our promotions work as the application season goes on. So we are running an Ask Our Alumni panel at the end of October, October 29th. It's a Wednesday evening. And we're seeking alumni who want to sit on that panel to talk about how to stand out in the application process, because obviously they've had success with their application, and it's a fun reflection tool, I think, for recent alumni. Looks like I need to update this because it says October 18th, but it's actually October 29th. Sorry, I missed that. Okay. Other volunteer roles, city event planner, UWC Day and those summer gatherings, and sometimes even holiday gatherings or volunteer initiatives. We're looking for volunteers who just want to help us gather a group of UWCers together. We recently established a club at the University of Toronto that is a UWC club, but it is open to anyone who aligns with the philosophy of education, international education, and the pursuit of peace and sustainability. We had one of our biggest events in Toronto ever just at U of T for UWC Day, which was incredible. But if you're somebody who likes to gather people together and you live in any of these major cities in Canada, let us know. We would love to work with you. If you are someone who's really intrigued in terms of how we do the matching process, the nominations part with our finalists, we keep it very small because there's a lot of intricate detail that we are discussing with the nominations committee. And so we are looking for folks who are very analytical thinkers and are able to consider bias and ethics in pretty much everything we do. And this is probably our largest commitment role for sitting on the committee. But we would love to have a few more folks join, learn how we do this, just to support the sustainability of what we do, because we've had some amazing volunteers who have been working with us for years that I'm sure may want some time back in their lives one day. So that one's definitely an area that we could use some support in. Of course, fundraising. If you even know of a grant or you are an expert in grant writing, help us with that. Help us out. Flag grants for us. Let us know what's available. If you are someone who isn't afraid to ask your network of people to fundraise for your birthday towards UWC every year, and you run a fundraiser on your Facebook account or through your social media, we would greatly benefit from that. And I'd be remiss to say that if you have the ability to donate $1 a month or $5 a month and potentially sacrifice a coffee to buy it for your national committee, those monthly donations for us make a huge difference in sending students to UWCs who have high financial need. It's a really big thing, and we definitely are working to increase our capacity to fundraise to support our students. Okay, some really big ones I'm going to highlight because these are typically what most folks are here to ask about. First is a campus mentor role. Now, we have 90 new students that have just entered the UWC organization, and we have 70 in their second year. So right now we have 160 students that need mentors, and we've got about 30 mentors at the moment that we're onboarding and training. But we are trying hard to build a strong mentorship experience that provides our mentors with a lot of professional development and the ability to build up their resume from the work that they're doing. We match you with a new student headed to your campus that you recently graduated from, and we ask you to have one-to-one chats with them once a month for their first 6 months of the UWC journey. We ask you to then check in every so often over the next 2 years so that you've developed a relationship with them where if they need help, they can call you first to say, how can I navigate this, teacher? Or I'm feeling really homesick. Is there a hike that you know that I could go do that would make me feel more connected to nature? Recently, a Canadian at UWC Changshu has been really struggling to find access to green, honestly, hiking trails. And it's their mentor that has had the knowledge that's been able to help guide them and support them through a lot of that homesickness. So it's been so valuable, and it's also hugely helpful for me and for our parents and guardians and for the schools, because there's this institutional knowledge that you all have as alumni, how to navigate this stuff because you're fresh right out of it. You are committed and matched to the student through their whole 2-year journey. Of course, it doesn't always work out where maybe you're not that invested in this person, or the student's not that invested and doesn't feel like they need a mentor, and that's okay. We'll rematch you. But typically we say it's no more than 5 hours a month, if that, right now. And we do mental health first aid, we do coaching, PD, and we're actively building a bit of a curriculum with a UWC graduate who's also just completed a degree in social work. Okay. Alumni engagement, regional leads, people who are really invested not only in events, but figuring out ways to engage UWCers or people who have similar values to UWCers together in these regions, because we want to be able to give back as groups and create connections across the many different UWC campuses across Canada. So if that's something that feels like it's speaking to you and what you're seeking, let us know. We're looking for folks in all of these regions. Global Selections is a great resource through the international office to develop a lot of selection experience. It's all virtual, and it is something that I highly encourage people to get involved in if they're looking to become a selector, because Canada does selections really 3 times a year now. You have to kind of volunteer multiple years in a row to really build up your selection skill set. And in the past, we used to only do it once a year. So I'm trying to give you more opportunities if being a selector is a skill set that you're hoping to build upon and have more experience. Global Selections is a great resource. Now, we've broken down our selection experiences based on time commitment and adaptability with schedules, because it can be a lot. So you can choose to do one of the following roles that I'm going to highlight, or all of them. It's up to you and what you feel you can give. So first off is an application reader. Typically, you would be reading for the first three weeks of November. You'd have to have one group meeting with your regional team where you're shortlisting candidates that you're choosing to invite to the group activity. And there's about 2 hours of mandatory training with sometimes 1 to 3 hours of individual work. But I think the 1 to 3 hour individual work is more predicting how much time does it take you to read. So that's really thinking about you having maybe 8 to 10 applications assigned to you to read, and it takes you about 20 to 30 minutes to read per application. It can be more. Some regions are going to ask you to read up to 15 applications per cycle. But we try not to have anyone reading more than 12 as the average for readers, just because if it creates a bias in terms of who you read first and who you read last and who you read in between, and how well you remember them. So we don't want to overload you as a reader. Now, if November is not a good time for you, but you do want to be involved in selections, we run smaller national selection cycles in February and April as well. And the same rule exists for all of those timelines. Okay, next up is if you want to be an interviewer. There is some training available in October. We're predicting that it is 1 to 3 hours. It's likely 1 hour with a little bit of individual work, but not a lot. But the time commitment for interviews is concrete. It is the time of the weekends that we're doing the interviews, which are advertised on our website and confirmed by October 18th. So if you're in Quebec or Ontario and you want to be involved in reading and interviewing for that team, you're also going to have to make yourself available for at least 1 day on some of these weekends. And then you would likely have 1 to 2 meetings where you're creating your final rankings for the students in that region. Okay, if reading and interviewing is not totally up your alley, but you really love to facilitate and you want to engage with all of the students at once, we're looking for activity leaders who are willing to run some of our virtual activities throughout the last weekend of November. So again, similar timeline for training and facilitation work. It's usually one weekend and you might be online for 8 hours each day with bio breaks and things in between. But it can be really great experience if you're looking to facilitate and think about how to navigate activities online and pivot them from in-person to being online. And they're a lot of fun. Those are the best days, I think. They really reinforce, I think, why selectors do what they do. They definitely reinforce to me why I love the job that I get to do, because you get to see all of these amazing, incredible youth connect together and be challenged by one another and by the activities that we're running for them. Okay, so those are the roles. I've made it through all of them. Requirements to become a volunteer with the National Committee of Canada. We will ask you to sign a confidentiality agreement and a code of conduct based on how we want to work in a respective shared values team environment. And also because you will encounter confidential information in terms of how we do selections and nominations in particular as a mentor. There is a lot of information that we're hoping that you can keep confidential to yourselves and share it within only the work that we do. And if you're going to engage directly with youth, which the majority of our volunteer roles do, criminal record check is also required, but it is only one criminal record check every 5 years. And it's quite a simple thing to do that we guide you through online. So it's not too big of a hurdle. All right, so how do you actually get invited to volunteer? Those of you that are here, I'm going to send you an email. If you're watching this on YouTube, there's going to be a link to the survey in the description of the video that you'll be able to click on to fill out a form. In that form, we're asking for your contact information and your volunteer preferences now that you've heard about all of the options that are available. Once you fill out that form, I'm also automatically going to send you the Code of Conduct confidentiality agreement and the criminal record check process. And from there, we will connect you with whatever team of volunteers you would be joining. I should also highlight that in order to pursue roles like leadership roles within the National Committee, we are asking that you have volunteered with us for at least 1 year. So if a board role is something that you're interested in, or a regional leader like a selections leader, or even an alumni and community engagement leader for a region, we're looking for folks who have invested at least a year with us already to take on that leadership role. Finally, we have some upcoming events across Canada in October. October 17th and 18th, we are showing the amazing UWC Adriatic film, Before We Forget. It is an incredible film about the magic of the UWC experience. And we're so excited to be sharing the film as a screening in these 3 cities. We have invited local educators and prospective students and families, but we're very hopeful that we will have a lot of UWC alumni and our volunteers out to really enrich the film discussions and engagement. And it is such a beautiful thing to see as an alum. I think if you haven't had the chance yet to see the film, it is a great opportunity, and I'll send you the links. You can RSVP on the Eventbrite UWC Canada page. Okay, we've hit the end. So thank you for watching. I'm going to stop recording and stop sharing and just take some questions if anybody has any questions.